Hey, what's up guys, Gypsy, and we are back here today. Going to be bringing you guys my APA Season 4 draft analysis. So, the APA is a draft league that I haven't been featured up on the channel before. This is the only time I've ever been a part of this league, but it's definitely got some solid players in it this season. And it's a bit of a different kind of draft league, so it's actually going to be a Little Cup draft league, which is a bit of a change from what you've seen on my channel before. I haven't ever really shown any Little Cup content on my channel, so this is definitely going to be a bit of a change. It's also a Wi-Fi draft league, so you're going to be seeing Wi-Fi, those crisp graphics. A bit of a change of pace from the more competitive showdown leagues that I've been a part of in the past, but in saying that, I'm still going to try and try my best to bring you guys entertaining and insightful content for any of you guys who might want to get involved in the Little Cup tier, because it's definitely, I feel like there's a bit of division on Little Cup. Like, some people really like it, some people just don't like it or don't know anything about it. That was definitely me. Like, a few months ago, I knew very little about the tier, but all it takes is a little bit of reading, a little bit of playing, and you kind of get a sense of how the metagame works. But as far as Little Cup in a draft league format, this is not something I've ever played, so it should be a fun new experience. I know a couple of the guys in the league have played Little Cup draft before, so yeah, it should be a really fun experience. But before we jump into my actual draft, I'm going to give you guys a bit of a rundown on some of the mechanics of Little Cup, what the kind of the environment is like, because prior to joining this league, I had very little understanding of Little Cup. I never bothered to go and look into it. It wasn't a tier that really interested me, but I have been playing it for a while now, and it's actually a lot of fun. So yeah, before I jump in, I'm just going to give you guys a breakdown of how Little Cup works, because this is all going to be played at level 5, so it's not just like we're using Little Cup mons at level 50. It's going to all be done at level 5, so that comes with it a whole bunch of mechanical changes that aren't present in the higher level drafts. So alright, so the first thing is damage rolls. In Little Cup, much like the difference between level 50 and level 100, the lower the level, the higher the variance in the damage rolls. So if you guys have ever played level 50 draft leagues, you'd know that mons tend to do more damage at level 50 than they do at level 100. Now you imagine that effect multiplied tenfold by the fact that we're playing at level 5. Moves have the difference between a min and a max roll on most of the moves in Little Cup will be huge, and this is something that is kind of sucks, because like that's out of your control heavily. Like, if you get a min roll versus a max roll, that could be crucial. So that's going to be a factor in a lot of games, I reckon, this season, for a bunch of different people, but it can also work in your favor. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag there. It makes the tier kind of like one of the questionable kind of mechanics of the tier, but another factor is speed ties. That's a very common thing in the tier, just based on how a lot of the mons with max speed investment do reach the same speed tier. In regards to the kind of middling speed tiers in the tier, obviously things in elite speed tiers like the 18s, the 19s, and the 20s point are tending to outspeed everything naturally, but a lot of mons are sitting at like between 40 to 60 base speed, so they end up hitting around like 13, 14, 15 speed. So yeah, speed ties are going to be a thing, I'd say, in this league, so that's another thing to keep in mind. And lastly, I wanted to touch on the viability of certain mons in a draft league format using Little Cup mons. So in the Little Cup tier, there are a handful of mons that are like a cut above the rest. So these are things like Volibear, Mindfu, Diglett, I would say, and then there's an argument to be made for defensive mons like Fungus, and those are the kind of top tier mons. There are mons below that, like in the viability rankings. You can go and check that out for yourself if you're interested, but they're all tiered a certain way. But as far as draft league goes, mons like Mindfu in particular, Volibear, Diglett, stuff like Ponyta, these are mons. Abra is another one. These are mons that, in my opinion, like, this is just my opinion, you guys may disagree, but and again, I've never played draft league for Little Cup yet, but just my thoughts approaching the season. these mons will be the most dominant in the format due to how versatile they are. It's not necessarily due to like how successful they are in the tier, in the like Smogon LC tier, but just the versatility, their speed, and their flexibility with Z-moves are going to be really, really important. In my opinion, they're going to be very dominant in this season of the APA. So with that kind of out of the way, hopefully you guys have a better understanding of Little Cup. Pretty much, yeah, there are crazy damage rolls, speed ties are pretty common, and there's a handful of mons that typically perform a lot. But yeah, obviously because it's Draft League, a lot of mons are going to be a lot more viable than they are in standard play, just because their counters are pretty much eliminated. Like, if there's a popular counter to a certain mon that is splashed in the LC tier, in Draft League, obviously only one team can have that counter. So a lot of things are a lot more free and flexible to perform well. So that should be pretty interesting to see. But I actually got second pick overall in this draft, so it's a snake draft like usual, and I was placed second, which is really nice because it pretty much guarantees me to get one of those mons that I mentioned earlier, one of those really dominant mons that I feel I can structure a team around. So the first mon that actually went in the draft, Leo 6-foot Hacks, was in front of me. He ended up grabbing Mindfu, and yeah, Mindfu is certainly a mon that I have my eye on, but given the fact that he took it, a mon that I was actually even more excited to grab was up next, and that's the mon that I ended up grabbing, and that was indeed Volibear. So Volibear is a mon that you guys may have seen me use in the past. I used Volibear in a draft tournament like not that long ago, and it was a level 100 draft tournament. I've used Mandibuzz to great success last season in the NPL, and that was a ton of fun. I love Mandibuzz. Both Mandibuzz and Volibear are both amazing at level 100, but Volibear at level 5 is an entirely different beast. This thing is like, I would make the comparison to Landorus T. Obviously Volibear doesn't rock like Landorus does. He doesn't set rocks, but the versatility that Landorus T offers a draft is comparable to what Volibear can do for a draft. If not Volibear, maybe a little bit more than Landorus T. That's because Volibear's like, its bulk with a Violite, plus its potential to be a mixed attacker. It can be like a sweeper with weak armor. This thing is insane. Very, very stoked to get it. Its dual typing is resisted by only one mon in the tier, and that's Pawniard, and I get coverage for Pawniard, and I actually don't even face the team that has Pawniard, which is pretty funny. So yeah, this is definitely a great mon that I can build my team around. It's in the draft format, it's going to be even harder for teams to check, because you can tailor make Volibear to get around any potential kind of answer your opponent may have to it. So yeah, this is definitely a mon that I'm pretty stoked to have. But you know, granted, I'm pick 2 in the draft, so by the time it comes back to me, there's going to be a ton of picks in between. And I had a few ideas of how I wanted to pair Volibear, but a lot of them did get sniped along the way. Though a mon that I was thinking about grabbing when it came back to me was still around when it came to my second pick. So as you guys can see here on the screen, we had a choice of this was a kind of tiered system, so we had to pick 1 tier A, 2 tier Bs, 2 tier Cs, and a tier D, which this is a really, really trash tier. There's very, very few good mons in this tier. And then we had a point allocation that we could then spend on our free picks. So the next one I grabbed was another A tier mon, so that's going to use up one of my free picks and use up some of the points there I had, but it was worth it, definitely. That mon is going to be Spritzy. Now Spritzy, for anyone who's played the Little Cup tier or knows anything about it, Spritzy is it's a juggernaut. This thing is probably the best utility mon in the tier. The best cleric without a doubt, given the fact that it has Aroma Veil. And just that pure fairy typing makes it just a fighting killer, a fighting check, which is amazing. It's the best, I would say, of the Volibear answers in the tier. It's definitely the most reliable. Granbull's pre-evo, I forget its name. The little pink dog Snubble isn't really a Volibear answer, given Volibear's nasty plot set. Spritzy is the closest thing to a check to Volibear, and I grabbed it pick 2, which is pretty amazing. So yeah, this thing is going to be a ton of fun. It's extremely slow, but with a Violite, its bulk is through the roof. And it actually got a few new toys in Ultra Sun and Moon, so I'm pretty keen to use those this season. This thing is definitely going to be a lot of fun for me to use over the course, and it just synergizes really nicely with Wallaby and sets me up with a really bulky offensive duo to kick off this draft. So I pretty much chose immediately after this because I'm at pick 2, so it came back to me, and then Leo picked, and then it came back to me yet again. So the next one I decided to grab was my first tier B, and that's Meowth. Now Meowth is obviously a pretty funny mon. It doesn't seem too good. I mean, Persian, its evolution is garbage. It's never drafted in regular kind of draft format. Alolan Persian is great, but yeah, regular Persian is pretty average. But in Little Cup, Meowth is very different. Meowth is pretty amazing. It kind of reminds me of Megalop in a sense that whilst it lacks fighting coverage, the Megalop has its priority is just ridiculous. Meowth with Stab Technician. After Stab and Technician, its Fake Out is 90 base power, which is kind of wild. That's actually it's 90 after Stab and Technician. So this thing is strong, and with a Life Orb, it's just nuts. It has amazing coverage. Technician also allows it to run 90 base power hidden powers, so that's another factor to consider. It can definitely run a fantastic mix attacking set, and it does get the speed tier of 19, which is pretty critical. As I mentioned earlier, that's one of the more elite speed tiers in the format. So having a mon already in that speed tier is going to be important for those teams that really lack a faster mon. It can function as a revenger to a lot of faster frail setup sweepers as well, just due to its Fake Out plus Feint combination. So yeah, pretty rap to have Meowth. Should be a great addition to the squad. The next one I grabbed was Corphish, my second tier B, and Corphish is a mon that was once very dominant in Little Cup, but with the surge of popularity of stuff like Fungus and Mariani, it really kind of struggled. Ferroseed as well was another one, but in the draft format, when things like that are limited to only one team alone, and Mariani wasn't even drafted, which is a bit of a crime in my opinion. That thing is amazing. Corphish is just a nightmare. It's gonna be wild to build with this thing. I'm pretty excited. Adaptability Crab Hammer is insanely strong, and having that adaptability Aquajet is gonna be really clutch for a lot of games in my opinion. This thing is very strong, and it gets both Dragon Dance and SD, so it's a viable setup win con in a lot of games, and really just the one that can break down teams of something like Meowth or Volby to clean up. So yeah, pretty stoked to have Corphish. It's pretty bulky when slapped on in a Violite as well, so that's something to consider. The next one I grabbed was Bronzor. This is going to be, I think this was also a tier B, so I had to use up another one of my free slots. But the reason I grabbed Bronzor, whilst it is kind of passive, like it's not the strongest one in the world, its bulk is insane, and it's one of the best spritzy answers in the game. Again, so this is another example of me trying to pick up one of the checks to one of my valuable win cons here. So yeah, Bronzor does check spritzy well, and it's a nice rocker. At this stage I don't have a rocker on the squad, so it's nice to pick up a Bronzor that accomplishes that role. And yeah, this thing is just really hard to kill if you're not a dark type using knockoff, or like a Life Orb, powerful attacker using knockoff. This thing can chew a ton of hits, and with Recycle and Berry Juice, it essentially has a pseudo recover, which is really nice for this tier because not a lot of mons have reliable recovery. And yeah, Bronzor can be tailored to fulfill a whole bunch of different roles. So yeah, pretty happy to have this thing. Forms a very nice defensive core with Volibee and Spritzy, resisting Volibee's Fairy type weakness, Spritzy's Poison and Steel type weakness. So yeah, we're off to a pretty solid defensive start here. The next one I decided to grab was Litleo from tier C. This thing's pretty crazy. I think Litleo is arguably as good, if not slightly better than Litten, which was in the tier B. Litten does get intimidated, but Litleo's a bit bulkier. It's a bit faster, I'm pretty sure. And it's very powerful. Very solid special attacker. This Litleo is pretty speedy. It hits a respectable 17 in its speed stat, which is enough to outspeed a lot of the tier. and its Fire Blast and Hyper Voice is a very powerful. Also, is a very very viable Z move user. In this league, anyone can be a Z move holder, so that's pretty wild. Not sure. I don't really agree with that, to be honest. I think restricting teams to like a couple of Z move users is the more balanced approach, but I can also see how it's like more fun to have everyone having a Z. So yeah, it's not the end of the world, and this is definitely one of the valuable mons on my team who can really just function well with the Z move. So Leo, having that fire typing is another thing that there aren't a ton of fire types that are drafted regularly in the LC tier. Well, there aren't a lot to choose from really. Having Litleo in this tier I felt was a steal that I couldn't really pass up. And having that secondary normal typing is pretty nice for stuff that resists fire. Like water types, I can always hit them with a Hyper Voice. So yeah, this mon is going to be a ton of fun to use. It's got a few tricks up its sleeve as well, which I don't really want to discuss. But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to bring those during the season. Now the next one that I wanted was actually Budju, but that got sniped the turn before I was going to pick it by Leo. So I did pick up Oddish instead. A little spoiler though, I have ended up dropping Oddish and picking up Budju because Leo was actually replaced by A-Drive and he ended up dropping Budju before he played his first game. So I ended up grabbing Budju, and that's going to be in place of Oddish. So I'm kind of just going to discuss Budju instead of discussing Oddish, because Oddish was essentially a backup to Budju. But yeah, having that grass poison is pretty nice because it allows me to soak up T-spikes, as well as setting spikes in Budju's case, which is pretty nice for stuff like Corpish and Meowth. They both really appreciate the opposing team getting whittled by spikes in conjunction with Bronzor's Rock. So yeah, having that is definitely going to be clutch. It's also a pretty nice Firewater Grass core with a pretty nice like offensive Firewater Grass core with Corpish and Litleo, which is something that I don't usually care too much about, having a Firewater Grass core. I think fire types are one of the most overrated typing in the format. I don't think they're essential to a draft at all, but in this case, Litleo functions nicely in this tier because not a lot of teams have solid fire answers. So yeah, Oddish or Budju in my case will be a nice partner to that. Having Natural Cure as well, Axe, allows Budju to act as a status sponge, which can be pretty useful. So at this point, I have to start dipping into the D tier sooner rather than later. And we're going to get to that in just a sec, but before I do that, I am going to grab Smoochum as my my second last free slot, and this was a tier C mon as well. Smoochum, Smoochum's pretty interesting. It's not used at all in standard play, but it has a lot of potential in my opinion in the format because its dual typings are just very solid offensively. Psychic and Little Cup particularly is a ridiculously good offensive stab. Not to mention the fact that I've got Bronzor and Volibee, who are two of the best psychic resists, or immunities. So yeah, having Smoochum is going to be pretty amazing. Ice is always an amazing offensive typing, so yeah, this thing can really come in clutch in a lot of games, I feel. It's got a really nice speed tier and special attack stats. So yeah, this thing has a ton of options. And yeah, for tier C, I felt like it was too good a mon to pass up because having special attackers is going to be pretty useful. You see, I've got like a ton of physical attackers in Meowth, Corpish, even Litleo and Volibee. But yeah, more special attackers to join the squad is definitely appreciated here. So at this stage, I was going to jump down into the tier D. Like I said, this is the really trash tier. This is the lowest of the low. But there was a mon that I did really want for the team, and that was Wooper. Wooper gives me a secondary water, a defensive water to complement Corpish's offensive nature, as well as a ground type, which I currently lack. So yeah, Wooper gives me a mon that can help versus a ton of electrics. Granted, they can just run Hidden Power Grass, but yeah, Wooper forces that, which is definitely nice for the squad. It also, yeah, forms a nice defensive core with Spritzy, resisting Spritzy's two weaknesses again, as well as Volibee, resisting Volibee's electric weakness. So yeah, Wooper also gets Unaware, which is extremely useful. You guys know that I drafted Quag and Vileplume in my MPL Season 8 draft, so yeah, drafting their baby variants again here, which is pretty exciting. So this thing should put in work. Also gets Water Absorb, which is pretty useful. Allows it to check stuff like Chinchou, Chinchou's dual stabs perfectly, so that's really solid. The next mon that for my last pick, I was really scraping the bottom of the barrel. I got sniped a ton in this tier, so I was left with potentially the GOAT of the team, potentially the one that's going to put in the most work, and that is Big Hoot Hoot. This thing is very mediocre. It's like the definition of mediocrity, but you know, you never know. This thing could put in the work. It does get defog, so that's pretty clean. I've got a secondary form of removal, which means that Volaby won't necessarily be pressured to defog in games that I feel is required. Can always bring Hoot Hoot. Also gives me some nice flying spam with Volaby. And yeah, it has a couple of tricks it can run, so that's all I'll say about Hoot Hoot. But as far as it coming to a lot of games, it probably realistically won't. It's just it's kind of underwhelming. But in terms of what was left in the tier, it was better than picking up some stage 1 bug or something like that. So yeah, it has solid spit F and HP, so it can potentially run a nice, like, a bulky set. So that's going to be my draft. I'm pretty pumped for the season. It's going to be a lot more, I want to say, like, it's going to be a little bit more casual than the other draft leagues have been involved in, just because it's, you know, it's Wi-Fi. It's going to be a little cup, but it's going to be fun. And obviously, like I said, I'm going to try and bring you guys, you know, informative, entertaining content that's you know, in style with what I usually bring to the channel. So I'm sure you guys will enjoy. There's going to be a whole bunch of people that I've never played. I haven't ever played anyone in this league before, so they have a really interesting roster. There's guys like Joey, which he's become a good mate of mine recently, and then there's people like Envy, Chimpact as well, who I've never played. Yeah, and Gator's in the league as well. Yeah, a ton of pretty well-known names. A-Drive, of course. I think I mentioned him earlier. And then people who are affiliated with the APA that will also be fun to play. Those are the names that I've heard of. I don't really know a ton of the other guys. Kelly under the radar is also involved. And yeah, that's it. But yeah, I'm sure it's going to be fun to play all of them. It's going to be an interesting experience. Hope you guys are pumped for this Wi-Fi Draft League. It's yeah, it's definitely going to be a change from what you're used to seeing on my channel. But going to be continuing with ITL and future draft leagues to come, but this should be a nice change in the meantime. So if you guys did enjoy, let me know what you guys thought of my team in the comments, and drop a like on the video if you're keen for this season. It should be a fun one. That's going to be it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you next time.